listening to the Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media, the podcast professionals. This podcast is about the story of Australian men and women, the coaches that we entrust to develop our players and our teams. And in the main, these stories haven't been told. We're honoured today to have Belinda Wilson. Belinda's an Aussie who's currently the Senior Technical Development Manager for women at women's football at FIFA, based in a very autumnal Zurich, as I'm sure we'll find out in a little while. Belinda fell in love with football at Byron Bay Football Club at Football Far. I keep going to say Far North Queensland. That's not right.
No.
Football Far North.
Football Far North Coast.
Football Far North Coast, that's what it is.
Yeah.
My apologies, Football Far North Coast. That's where she fell in love with the game, had trouble playing the game early on because she was a girl, and then ended up as a 12-year-old playing in the women's team, coached her brother's junior team, and then went on into a range of different things, including heading off to Asia with the Asian Football Confederation, where she worked in a technical role, headed off to club football in Norway, where she's also a director with Curva Football, ended up in Guam as the Guam National Technical Director and the national team coach. Also won a premiership with Brisbane Roar, played in a championship game at Brisbane Roar, has worked as a consultant with FIFA, been on the technical panel at Olympic Games and World Cups, and is now in the current role based in Zurich. And for a very short period of time, headed off to Zurich. She set another record for Football Far North Coast, got it right this time, where she was appointed as the head coach of the men's team that play in the Premier League in football on Football Far North Coast. Long introduction, messed up a couple of those things. Apologies. G'day, Belinda Wilson.
No apologies. Thank you, Gary. Most honoured to be here.
How's autumnal Zurich treating you right now?
Yeah, it's great. It's just the weather's not so nice. It's very cold, even though it's not even winter yet. We're down to 10 degrees today. But Zurich's amazing. Switzerland's amazing. The people, just the scenery. It's beautiful. I am landlocked, which is a little bit different. I'm used to seeing the ocean, but there's a lake nearby, so it's okay.
You can't surf on the lake, though, I'm guessing. Or maybe
no, I can't.
Unfortunately. Surfing was a part of your background as a kid growing up, yeah?
100% it was. Living in Byron Bay, it's not something that you don't do. So surfing almost every day.
So you're a surfer at heart. I'm guessing the family was in and around the surf. Where did your love of football come from?
It was a trip that we did. We went to England. We was to visit my family. We were there for 3 months, and every Saturday afternoon was sitting in front of the TV watching this game, and I had no idea what the game was, but I had no idea who was playing. I didn't know the rules, but the enjoyment that I got just sitting with the family with all the passion and everything that was happening was just huge. And this was happening every Saturday. It was just like a known little party. And then by the end of that 3 months, I was a Manchester United fan. And then I came back to, you're right. I came back to Australia, and while I was in England, I was also going to school, and at the school, they allowed me to play football. So then I started to see and be involved with it. And then I came back to Australia and came back to Byron and went to the club and wanted to sign up, and they said no. So I was like, oh. So I ended up at the fields because we didn't live too far away from the fields. And I ended up coming down to the field almost every Saturday to watch my cousin play.
And then in doing the research for this, it says that you started to coach your brother's team from under sixes through to about under 13s. Is that the case? And how on earth did that come about? Yeah,
so obviously I'd loved the game, and my brother is 10 or 11 years younger than me, and he got to play football, and I still wasn't allowed. But he came home from school. I came home from school, and he's like, "You're going to be my coach. You're going to be my coach." And I'm like, "What? No, I'm not. I've got better things to do. And mum's just like, yeah, you're going to be his coach. And I'm like, I can't say no to my mum. So I'm like, okay. So a little 5-year-old, brother just was like, yeah, you're going to be my coach. And I'm like, oh, dude, Saturday mornings, no.
Yeah. The way all good coach recruiting happens at community football clubs, eh?
Yeah. So, no, it was great. It was great. I mean, I loved it. That same year, girls could start playing. So we had mixed football. We had 2 young girls start in that team, and they played up to the age of 12, I think 11 or 12. And then there was a girls team, so they went across to a girls team by the time they were 12. But it was probably one of my most fondest memories as a coach. Just growing up in the community, not just in Byron, but just in that football community. It was a family.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wouldn't say I was the best footballing coach, but I just made sure everyone had a lot of fun, me included.
I reckon there's a message in there somehow. Everyone having some fun. Got to love that. Tell us, this isn't about your playing career, but I understand that you couldn't play with the girls, but at 12 you were allowed to play in the women's team, because I'm assuming they assumed that you were physically developed enough to cope with it then. Is that the case? And how did that happen? Because I think you then also, a few years down the track, ended up coaching that same team as well.
Yeah, so as I said, I came back from England as a 9-10-year-old, and my best friend who played, his mum and dad were a part of the committee at the Byron Bay Football Club, and they were trying to get me involved in the same age group, but the rules at the time wouldn't allow girls to play with boys. So they tried for 2 years before then they got permission for me to play in the women's first division in Lismore. Because I think at the time as well, and I could be wrong, that there was 2 associations at that time, the Women's Soccer Association and the Football Association, so we were separate. So yeah, they deemed that I was okay to play in an adult competition. So as a 12-year-old, I was playing. I didn't stay playing too long. I think it was maybe physically I was okay, but emotionally and psychologically maybe not old enough. But I think I played for maybe 2 seasons, and then was like, no, I'm not enjoying it. None of my friends are playing. I don't know these adults. They're all as old as my mum. So from there, that's when I think I went into coaching, and to be fair, that's where I enjoy and where I get a lot of the passion from. Just because the playing opportunities just weren't there as a kid, so I never really. I've fallen in love with the game, but as a player, I don't see the game as a player. I see the game as a coach.
Has that been a part of what's driven you on to make sure there's more opportunities for women and girls?
I think so. I keep going back and go, how come I followed this path? And I think it's because it's just, there's 2 words I always use, and it's access and opportunity. And as a kid, I didn't have the opportunity, and I definitely didn't have the access, but I did have the opportunity and the access to coaching by the time I was 15, 16 years old. So I think it's about how do you create better pathways, better introductions, and just seeing that there's opportunities for anybody who wants to participate in anything. I'm fortunate where I've been able to drive a career out of it, but I think everything that I do is more about how do you provide a better access, how do you provide better opportunities, and when you're on that path, how do you develop that? How do you create a proper development? You look at player development in age groups, they've got from 6s all the way through to senior age groups. But in women's football, that doesn't exist in many countries. You've got age groups, in really key age groups in development, that are missing. So as a coach, as a female coach, if you're involved in the women's game, you miss that same important pathway as a coach, because they don't exist in the pathway to coach. So you go from grassroots football to senior football. You don't go through a youth pathway. Or you'll go from under 13s to under 17s, because nothing in the middle. And then there's specific, in my opinion, key areas as a coach that you need to also develop through those age groups.
Yeah. You are still young if we cut you in half and count the rings, because that's how you work out how old coaches are, apparently. You're young in years and very wise. You must have been coaching for 25 years.
Yeah, it will be.
That's a lot of coaching experience, and maybe that's a significant part of why you're in the current role that you're in. Can you explain to us, because most people sitting here, including me, are not really going to know what the Senior Technical Development Manager for women's football at FIFA does. What does that mean for you on a day-to-day basis?
Lots of meetings. No. Basically, my role is to help develop development programs to develop the game. So from a coaching path, from coaching programs to player programs, to development, like we've got league development, women's football campaign, which is a grassroots participation program. And then obviously outside of that, looking at ways of how we can help the game grow technically, and what sort of support is needed and required in and around member associations to enable that to happen. I'm working on 2 really big projects at the moment, which are still in the concept phase and pilot phase, where we're directly working with member associations, national team coaches, and looking at ensuring that they have the knowledge and the capacity to be able to prepare their national teams to the level of what is required today in the women's game. So basically my role is to have that input to influence technical development within the women's game from a global perspective. And we ensure that all our programs are available to all 211 member associations.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And look, congratulations. I think we here in Australia we can be. There are plenty of people that are Euro snobs, as they call them, saying football in Europe is like the bee's knees. So to think that we've got, and most of it is, to think that we've got an Aussie sitting in such a key role for football and women's football is just remarkable. So congratulations and all power to you, Belinda.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't see it. I just see it as a role that is an opportunity, and then getting the ability to then have some influence on how you can create change is one of the main reasons why I accepted the role. And I think being here, you do have that influence. And if I've got that opportunity that I can help someone else like myself be here and take over and do a better job than me, then I'll be happy for that handover to happen. It's just showing that someone from Australia, we're a young footballing nation. If you drive yourself, you can actually be wherever you want to be.
Yeah, and I know that you've used that influence. Well, I think you've had that influence when you were working in Guam as the national TD and national coach there. I think you helped Carl Dodd in the game.
Yeah. There's a few Aussies now that I've brought into the game. But no, it's good. It's just opening doors, and then it's not just opening a door for your mate, but you've got to open doors and create that opportunity. And once you're in there, you've got to do the work. And if you do the work, things will happen. So I think there's a lot of people in Australia that can and should be doing other stuff outside the country and could be in decision-making roles, not only for football in Australia, but for the region. And obviously from a global perspective, I can tell you there's a few more Aussies here in Zurich. I'm starting to meet them.
That's good. We've got people like Ange Postecoglou at Celtic. We've got Tanya Oxley now at Chelsea. So there are people coaching in Europe, which is fantastic news. Do you think the stocks of Australian coaches are? Well, sorry. Let me rephrase the question. We spoke to Michael Varkanis on the show a couple of weeks ago, who's obviously assistant men's coach with Greece. His opinion was, he was quite categoric that, you know, there's lots of good coaches, men and women coaches in Australia that could hold down full-time jobs in Europe.
Yep.
That's where he believes the quality of Australian coaches. Do you think that's a fair statement?
100%. I think the education that we have in Australia from a footballing sense is quite good when you compare it across the region and when you compare it globally. And then you look at the likes of Tanya, you look at the likes of Ange, you look at other coaches that are currently having coaching roles, whether they're support coaching roles or the head coach. There's plenty of Australians who can easily come into this environment and make a career. It's not easy though. You come in and you have to fight for everything, and it's a very, very competitive job. But I think we have the mindset, and we also have the determination to prove people wrong. And I think from an educational and an experience perspective, if we've got some top Australian coaches out there in the NPL land that can't crack it in the A-League because that opportunity hasn't come about, going overseas is an opportunity to grow and develop, to maybe come back with that experience and with a bit of reputation behind you to get back into the A-League or back into Australian football. But I think it's just about taking a chance, taking that risk, calculated risk, but taking it and then doing all you can to succeed.
And I think, you know, if you want to be a full-time coach, essentially that means you've got to be prepared for a lifestyle that requires you to travel, whether that's around Australia or around Australia and Asia or Australia and Europe or the world, don't you? It's just part of the gig.
100%. I mean, if I use myself, I've spent maybe 12, 13 years outside of Australia, full-time coaching, administration roles. If I had stayed in Australia, I wouldn't be able to be in the position that I'm in today, but I wouldn't be in football full time. Those opportunities aren't there yet, but what I did was I took a risk, and sometimes I landed quite heavily because I made the wrong decision. But those things you learn from and you develop, and you make sure you don't do those same mistakes. But I think more Australians should take the opportunities to come overseas, because it just gives you a different perspective.
So how should they do that? How does your an Australian male or female coach that maybe is working in NPL land, maybe they're an assistant coach in the W League or the A League, how would they go about that? Is there a recognised pathway of doing that, or is it just about knocking on doors?
I think that there's a recognised pathway emerging, like with agents and stuff who can open the door for you. But I don't think it's truly that one way to go about and do things. I keep going back to in terms of the network. I mean, I had a network in Australia that gave me the opportunity for my first move to go overseas. It was them that brought that opportunity to me. Yeah. And then when I was overseas, I obviously was in an environment where my network grew globally. And being in various tournaments and seeing the same people, talking to different people, created more opportunities and more networks. And then just through that network, I was hearing about opportunities, and that's where I was starting to apply for different roles. And some I got, some I didn't. But I think for me, that's what I used. It was very indirect. It wasn't clear. It wasn't, I'm going to go and do this job so I can go and do this job so I can go and do that job. It was just, here's an opportunity. It's interesting. It's challenging. I'll see. It's not coaching, but it's still in football. So, I mean, that's how I did it. But I think that's starting to change just because there's starting to become more and more opportunities. I think networking is key. But now I think with the agents that are involved in the game from a coaching perspective, that's also one way, but it's one that I've never used. Yeah.
No need. Just jet setting around the world because you're good at what you do. Belinda, can I ask, obviously I'm going to guess that you coached in the early part of your career for a fair while without a formal coaching qualification. Is that the case? And then following on from that, how did you get into that formal coach education process? And has that all been in Australia?
I did my first coaching badge at 16.
Wow.
Through the club, they gave me my junior license. Then I went on and did my youth. And at the time, it was the state license. And then I did my B and A license in Australia. I'm now looking at doing my UEFA. Whilst I'm living in Europe, I think it's a good opportunity for me to just compare.
Yeah.
And then obviously learn the little golden nuggets that you do when you go back and redo it all again. So I'll start here doing hopefully my B license, and then hopefully go on to the pro over the next few years. But I think in Australia, I mean, I was lucky. I had a club that was very, very supportive with Byron, and they also saw that every coach within their system needed to have a coaching badge, and they provided that opportunity in terms of education. So I was lucky. And then Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation showed me that there was a pathway for coaching in terms of what licenses I needed to go towards the elite level. So I started on that pathway quite young.
Yeah. Do you think is there a difference between coach education in Europe and coach education in Australia?
I can't say yes and I can't say no just because I haven't been involved in any courses at the moment, but the pathways are similar. I'm currently looking at the different requirements from different confederations in terms of the coaches convention. And there's a big difference, massive difference in terms of the requirements from one confederation to another. I've just went through UEFA's and they're quite detailed. And there's a lot of criteria that is being set, and they also have that split. So you have, when you go from B license, you can go into a youth A or a senior A. So then there's quite a few different more levels in terms of footballing, but that depends on the career that you have. And obviously in Europe, the academies are quite strong, and that youth development is quite strong. So they look for youth coaches, not senior coaches, because obviously coaching youth and senior is quite different. Other confederations don't have other confederations have far less, like maybe only 5 or 6 criteria that need to be set. So I think the range of topics, curriculum is different. But I think it always comes back down to, with any education, it comes down to the person who's leading that education, who's the teacher, who's the educator, how engaged do they make the participants? Because I think with education, it's more about, well, here's an overview of what we need to learn, but it's up to the individual to go and actually go off and spend that time to learning outside the classroom and just come back in and just, it's almost like a referral. Oh yeah, I caught that. Oh, I didn't catch that. I need to learn about that. So I write that down, go off and learn that, come back. So it really comes down to the educators, in my opinion, not so much the curriculum base.
Yeah.
You got to drive interest.
And keep it.
Yeah.
As a coach, which coaches have had the most influence on you?
Oh, that's a really tough question.
Thank you.
I suppose in my, I didn't really have any coaches as a young coach to look up to, apart from the coaches at the club who were friends and family. I suppose a coach back home, Peter Ware. He was on the men's side. He was also a coach with the under-16 Northern New South Wales team. He lived in Bangalore. I looked up to him, and he really helped me cross from men's boys football to women's football in terms of elite. He got me onto the elite pathway. I'd say Tom Samani had a really big influence, just because at the time he was the coach of the Matildas, and especially when I was in Asia, I would see him a lot at the different tournaments and watch the girls play. And then I'd have to look at and I know you're not going to like this, Gary, but Sir Alex. I can't go past Sir Alex.
Everyone loved Manchester United when Sir Alex was in charge.
Yeah, I still like Man United. I know they're going through a tough time, but no, I think Sir Alex probably had he probably helped me develop more of the style I was looking for to play once I understood what was required in terms of how you get your team to play a certain way. And then I think from the women's side, it was strange because the only coach that I knew and really helped me as a kid, especially when I was going into the Northern New South Wales representative sides, was Connie Selby. She was always invited to camps, and she was always there helping me. And she was the only other female coach in Australia that I knew at the time. And then the other coaches would be like Hope Powell and Vera, who I met while I was at the 2007 World Cup. And they have been influential throughout my career. And Tina Tyne, who's the German coach who won the World Cup in 2003, was also another coach that I met. In 2007, I think it was just, for me, it was incredible because all of a sudden I'm sitting in a room full of female coaches who have really marked a spot on the development of the game up until then, and some of them are continuing to do so. Some of them are still either in coach education roles or still coaching national teams or club football. So that was the first time I really saw like more than one female coach in one room, and it was just crazy. For me, I was just like, oh my God, I shouldn't be here, but I am, and I'm loving it.
I love that. I love that. Good on you. So tell me then, what is coaching?
Oh, coaching. It's a journey full of ups and downs, and I think you, as a coach, you belong to a family, and that's a family within the coaching fraternity, but it's also a family within the club that you're at. That club becomes a part of your family, and then obviously the team that you have, becomes a really tight-knit family. And I think it's as a coach, you have certain responsibilities where you're not only teaching the footballing sense, but you're helping guide and develop values. And I think that's coaching. It's teaching the technical, the tactical, the physical, but in essence, it's teaching people to have really nice values and strong values. And I think and the way I work, it's more family orientated. So it's always that community. Let's bring everyone together, and that's what a coach can do.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. You not long before heading to Zurich, a few months before, you were appointed as the men's coach at Byron Bay Football Club, who play in the local Premier League up there. How was that? That's I think it says you're the first female to be appointed as to that role in FFNC. I'm going to guess
well
that probably it's easier than trying to remember what it stands for. But I just keep wanting adding Queensland to the end of it, and I know that's really going to offend some people.
Don't.
So I'll
please
leave that
don't.
off.
We live below the border.
What was I talking about? Oh yes. A woman coaching a men's Premier League team would have appeared to be impossible 5 years ago, maybe. It's you did it for a period of time before heading off to Zurich. How was that experience? Is it any different? Or is that a mindset thing? How did you cope with that?
Yeah, I think I was surprised that it became big news that I was the first female to be appointed, and I was like, oh, it's not about being a female; it's about just being a coach who has the experience and the qualifications to enable to coach at that level. At the beginning, I thought for me, it was a full circle. Like I started at the club, and now I was able to coach the first team in the men's side. And funnily enough, some of those boys I was coaching when they were 6 or 7 years old. So it was literally full circle.
What goes around comes around.
Yeah. So, but I also think that helped because they'd already been coached by a female. So, and they knew me, and they're the ones that came in and got me to come and coach. The club was really, really supportive, and they didn't see the gender being an issue. I remember my first training session where we were doing some trials for the first team and the championship team, and we had like 60 guys turn up.
Wow. And
I'm sitting here going, 60 guys, okay. We've got one field. Okay, what am I going to do? So I think that was the biggest challenge I had, was just the amount of players that were just trying to get into a team. Whereas in the women's game, we don't have those numbers. Very rarely do you have more than 30, 40 players turning up. It's in women's game, it's almost you're selecting yourself. At community football, it's if you've got 12 girls turning up, you're stoked. But to have that many people turn up was fantastic. And when we started training, the one thing obviously through the coaching that I've done and the level I've coached, sometimes you get lost and you forget about having the fun because it's so planned and everything's like, you got to do this, then you got to go do this, then you got to go do this, and then we've got a game, then you come back and you repeat, and you forget the fun aspect. What the boys did for me was remind me to have fun and to enjoy it. And I think we had a difficult season because it was COVID. I think we trained in isolation for half the season. So coming up with drills where you couldn't defend and or you couldn't tackle or anything like that was a little bit strange and frustrating for everybody. But what happened during that season was we became a family and a strong family. And then the football that we were playing at that, like, and with all due respect, it's community football, but the level of football that was being played was quite high. And when I look back, and I still want to give back to the region because the region has done so much for me. I think the biggest thing in rural Australia in terms of football is we need to do more around coach education. It's the biggest gap that we have for grassroots and youth football, because every time I kept seeing the opposition play or even watching the club football, watching the kids train, I'm just like, we've got to do better with coach education. And the whole time that we were there, I know it was COVID, but there was no access to coach ed. And for me, that's a crime because you're not offering anyone an out. You're not offering anyone to improve. You're not providing any more knowledge. And that needs to change. I think access to coach education in metropolitan areas is easy, but in the rural areas, it's not so easy.
Yeah. That's obviously a significant role that Football Coaches Australia can play. It seems to me that in the main, coach licensing is the domain of Football Australia and the member feds. Ongoing education, how coaches get better. It's a bit like putting an 18-year-old through a driver's license. You get a license, you get access to the road. It doesn't make you a great driver. And
100%.
We all know that you've said here, you learn how to make the right decisions by making the wrong decisions along the way. That's it. in the wonderful world of coaching, a few wrong decisions in a row can cost you a job, and you can fix that up as long as you have another opportunity. But do you were on the executive committee of Football Coaches Australia until you had to give that up to take the role? But do you see that that's a big place for Football Coaches Australia?
100%. I think the work that we were doing when I was there, and the work that you guys are continuing to doing, I think is key to help the development of all coaches, and the access to the information is easy because the way that you've put the presentations or you've put things together. The biggest thing that I found working in Oceania, we've got a pilot project going there now where we have mentors working with the coaching staff, and we're providing information that they've never had access to. And they're so thirsty and they want to know more, and they're there, and we have 30, 40, 50 people turning up at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night online, wanting to listen and wanting to know more. And then there's questions coming back to us going, oh, when's the next one? When's the next one? And I think that's where Football Coaches Australia has a real, can really support coaches in rural areas, because you have the ability and you have access to a network that can provide that information that's desperately needed and wanted. Yeah. It's just that they don't know how to access it.
Do you think that, Zoom meetings have been the saviour of coach education in the best part of the last 2 years? Coach education, the way that I remember it in my head, it was a long time ago now, and I'm a bit of a dinosaur, I do get that. but so much of the magic. Thank you. I'll send you the checks in the mail.
No worries. Thanks.
So much of that great coach education did happen in the classroom, but so much of it happened out on the pitch and at the meetings that followed the stuff that happened out on the pitch. Do you think that's the case, and do you think we'll get back to that? And do you think that's an important part of ongoing coach education?
Yeah, I think on the ground, the classroom is great. It's needed. It gives you a framework. But the real learning happens on the pitch. So it's almost how do we continue that development when you're on the pitch? What can we do? How can we do it? And I suppose it's more being creative in terms of what can we do. I think being mic'd up, having the video and watching it, and then going back into what we're doing now in terms of Zoom calls and Teams and what have you, you can create breakout rooms and dissect small clips and then have those discussions online. You can bring that to communities that don't have access. I think there's a hybrid approach, and I think what we've learned through COVID, yes, it's been disruptive. Yes, it hasn't been all that pretty in terms of how do you do the practical aspect. But I think by being creative, and most coaches that I know are very creative, they're people who find solutions. So I think we can find a way or a method that can help bring the pitch to the screen, and through that you can get some sort of learning, and then they bring that learning back onto the pitch, and it's just that ongoing aspects. And that's something in my career that I really missed, was to have someone or to have people to actually engage with, to challenge thinking. And I think if you have that and can create that environments, whether it's online or in the classroom, then you've got a really, really rich learning environment. But if you can't create that, then the learning is only what you're showing. So it's a slide. But I think it's more about building that trust, building that relationship, and then getting into an area, a space where you can actually start to challenge each other. And I think it's only in my last, since I stopped coaching and became the administrator, that I'm actually seeing the benefit of being challenged. The environment I'm in now, the team that I work in, we are such a high performing team. And I say that because the team is so balanced we challenge each other's thinking in a way where we're trying to improve people, not to take the legs from underneath them.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've not really experienced throughout my career. I've always been challenged, but it's been in the wrong way. It's like, hang on, that you judging me on my knowledge or my experience, or are you trying to challenge me because you've got a different opinion? No, you're challenging me because you don't think I'm good enough. Okay, no problem. But here, I don't have that. Like, the support that I have here is amazing. And if I had that in my coaching career, if I had that, the teams that we would have been amazing. Because as a coach, you would have learnt so much.
Yeah. What a great environment. We had a chat with Kath Canuli a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about that being in that coaches environment at West Sydney Wanderers, where she's got, you know, the male coaching team and other coaches, assistant coaches. There's 5 or 6 of them in the room, and they're talking about football. Essentially, most of the time, you know what it's like. It's hard to not to get back to football. And she just said it's just this wonderful learning environment where you're bouncing ideas off of one another, and none of them are right and none of them are wrong. They're ideas, and they might work for this coach with this team in this situation, but they
100%.
might not work for this coach or that team in this situation. So yeah, look, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
You're listening to The Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media, the podcast professionals. Today's guest is Belinda Wilson, who's, I have to read this every time, Senior Technical Development Manager, Women's Football in FIFA, who's just sharing her love of football and a wonderful football wisdom with us today. I know you're in an administrative role now, and you're spending more time coaching coaches and talking about player development than ever before, but how has your coaching changed over your coaching journey? You obviously started a long, long time ago as a young teenager. How has it changed in the most significant ways over the journey?
I think, especially the year that I spent at Byron, I kind of went back to my roots, literally. But in terms of my coaching, as I said to you before, I went through. I suppose it was a bit of the pressure and the level that you're at and the expectations that you need to have all these plans ahead and you need to be in details. And I do all that, and I've got the plan, but I think what I do now when I'm on the pitch with the players, it's more to have and build that relationship where you build that trust. And it's not so. It's the important bit is your planning and the organization and getting things right. But the most important bit, which is a bit that I lost through my career, was building that relationship with the players and how you do that. And I kind of, when I was with the boys, it was something that I really, really tried to do. Now, I had Argentinians, I had Brazilians who were all very passionate people. And they're demanding, and they speak different languages, and they're talking to each other on the pitch. But to bring them all in, it was the one thing that we had was just to bring them in and be that family. And I think what I've done over my coaching career now is just realize that when you come in as a team, whether it's the staff that you're working with or the players, it's creating a relationship of trust, and enabling the players to have a say and have a say in the direction and how they want to play, and then building something that's principle based instead of position based. And I think that's the biggest thing that for me I've changed in my career from coming from, I'd say, from Brisbane, where a lot of my coaching was basically position based because I was going back on terms of my coach education from the A license that I did. And that was a key thing, to taking that on board and going, it worked, but it didn't work at Brisbane. I had when I reflect on my first season, it was a fun season. We had a lot of success. Then we kind of struggled and went up and down a little bit. And there's reasons why that happens in a team. And then when I went to Guam and then I went back to the boys, it was more, okay, let's bring everyone together. Let's see what we've got. and then let's get that balance right on and off the pitch. Yeah. And I think for me, it's just really bringing those principles back into play, teaching those principles, because those are the things that most of the young players that I've coached don't understand because they don't watch a lot of football, and they're not coached in that way as youth players. Yeah. And I think for me, it's all about providing those principles within the coaching session, and then bringing that balance of fun, in the fun element, so that everyone goes home with a smile on their face. And I think that's the most important part. And I think that's the biggest thing that's changed.
I like that a lot. That's good. Good on you, coach. Like that.
Thanks, mate.
So tell me, Belinda, why do you do it? Why do you coach?
I love it. I can't give you one reason. I just enjoy it. I think I enjoy the challenge. I'm a problem solver. I think if you talk to a lot of my friends and my family, they just say I seek challenges. And I see football as a challenge. I see the game as a challenge. I see how can we improve? How can we beat that opponent? I remember having a conversation with one of the Matilda coaches a couple of years ago, and we just lost to Sydney FC it was in the last group stage, the league game, and I was so disappointed. And she goes, "What's wrong?" She goes, "Are you disappointed because you lost?" And I said, "No, I'm disappointed, but I'm lost." But I'm not disappointed I'm lost. I'm disappointed I can't play them again. Because I got to wait another 12 months before I can play them again. And I want to solve the problem that we had in that game. And I can't, because I can't play them again. Yeah. So I think that's why I love coaching, because I just love to solve a problem.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, but I just love it. I mean, where else do you get to go out and enjoy a fun game of football, or a fun game with 22 other people? I mean, you just jump on the field, and it doesn't matter where you're at, what language you speak, and you can just play, and everyone enjoys it. So I think that's why I like it.
The international language.
Yeah, exactly. It's got me through all the different countries that I've been in.
And pays a bill or two. That's always good.
It's helped pay a bill or two. Yes.
Hey, listen. I know you're now well entrenched in FIFA, and I can't imagine you have too many hours to be outside of this. But have any of coaches from other sports influenced you in any way? Have you taken anything from other invasion type sports, and any learnings or things that you've picked up along the journey?
To be honest, no, because I really haven't had the opportunity to, which is something that we now, in terms of what I do now, is I really look into. So I've been speaking to a volleyball coach who's now an educator. I've reached out to the rugby union coaches as well, just to see more so the methodology in terms of the coaching, understand what they're doing, understand the mindset, understand how they bring teams together. But it's more what I'm finding when I speak to these guys, it's not so much the technical, tactical aspects, it's creating that environment. So how do you create that learning environment within the classroom, within a Zoom, within the field? It's not so much the game itself, teaching the game, because obviously the different codes have different ways of playing different sports. But the essence is, how do you create that environment for learning, and what's the best? So by talking to these different educators from different sports, that's what I'm getting now. And I wish I had that throughout my coaching career. But I was football. I was just locked on football.
So is that more in the leadership and culture space, really?
Yeah.
How they're making that work.
Yeah, especially in the culture stuff. Leadership is always there, but in terms of building the right culture, and I go back on terms of it all starts with values.
Yeah.
So it's value driven, everything that we do. And then, the foundations is values, and we build everything up. And I think everyone I've spoken to in the high performance area, it's very similar. Like people in England, people in Germany, it's like, this is the key area. If we get this right, then everything else is built pretty easily.
No, that's good. You've coached around the world now, been at home, into Asia, back home again, Norway, back again. And I'm sure there's plenty of ups and downs in the way that living away from family. How important is developing resilience been for you on your journey?
It's probably been one of the most important things that I've had to do. Being away, and especially, I suppose, even more so now. Whereas before, when I've gone overseas, it's easy to come home. I buy a ticket whenever I want. I organise time off, and I can come back home to Australia. But this year, I remember when I was leaving, I was very apprehensive about leaving, and it wasn't because I was moving to a different country, different job. It was, I didn't know when I was going to be able to come home because of the COVID situation. So I think resilience is one of the key things as a coach, as a player, anybody really needs to develop, because it does become very tough when you're isolated. It does become, you do have moments where you go, why did I do that? Why did I make this decision? Why am I here? And then you have days where you're absolutely loving it and don't care. But to be resilient is, for me, has obviously I've developed that over the years, but I wouldn't be able to be here today if I didn't have that, because I still don't know when I can come home.
Yeah,
I'm still trying to see what happens in New South Wales if the government's actually going to allow me to come home.
They're talking about it. Hey, Melbourne's we're just out of 268 days of lockdown.
Yeah.
It's today's our first day of freedom.
Well done.
It's just
Why are you talking to me then, Gary? You should be out. It's Friday night.
Commitments. No, I did catch up with my old mate Ernie Merrick and his wife for lunch and a cup of coffee today.
Nice.
So that was nice. First time I've had coffee and a piece of china for about 18 months.
Wow.
So it was good. We're on the downhill run here, Belinda. A couple of questions to go. So right now, what does success for you look like?
Sorry, what was that? I missed that one.
What does success look like?
Oh, a smile on your face.
My face.
Yeah. Success. I think success for me, it's the small things. People say, "Oh, you're really successful." I look at myself and say, "Well, no, I'm not successful. I'm still on that journey, and I'm still trying to find different successes in different areas." So, success for me, in terms of the role that I'm at, is ensuring that there's more opportunities and more access to the game from a playing perspective, coaching perspective, administration perspective, making sure that there's pathways available for further development and growth. I think within the game, from both the men's and women's, I think we have so much success or different success stories out there. You look at your own success, it's like, what can I do and how can I do that better? And then it's those small steps that you make that gets you further. And for me, every step in the right direction is a success. It's not the end picture. It's how you got there. And it's those steps in between, I think for me, provides that success. And if I look at the jobs that I'm doing now and the projects that I'm working on now, I think if I can have member associations have annual programs set for their national teams, where they've got their girls coming in on a regular basis, they've got their girls playing in regular competitions domestically or in foreign leagues, then this project is a success, but it's only one small part of the whole success. It's only one part. It's only one chapter. But if everyone's doing their job right, then that one chapter that I'm working on and my colleagues are working on something over here, it builds that broader picture, that broader game, and then the game becomes really successful. So yeah, Gary, it's not an easy question to ask. I think for me, it's just the small steps that I make towards creating for that 9-year-old girl to be able to play football.
I like that a lot. And we always ask the tough questions on here, Belinda. That's why they pay me the big bucks. And if you believe that, I've got a second-hand car for sale.
Can you get it to Zurich? Is it a right-hand drive?
Yeah. So let's come back to your coaching career briefly for a minute. So tell me, do you coach the FIFA administrators? Do they play in like a community comp? Are you the coach? Are you the playing coach of that team? Or?
It's funny because we do have a teams here, boys and girls team called FIFA United. And I think that's very funny because if you break it down just to 2 letters, it's quite funny, but I won't go there. But I was asked recently because the coaches of the girls teams, he broke his collarbone, and then they didn't have a coach. So that one of our new colleagues who's just joined the team, Arbaneta, she's like, Belinda, you're coaching. I said, sorry. She goes, we need a coach. And I'm like, I don't have time to coach. She goes, no. And then she gave me this sob story about the coach who broke his collarbone, and we've got a bunch of girls who just want to play and don't have a coach. So whenever anyone gives me a sob story, I can't say no. So I've started coaching, I think 2-3 weeks ago, just the FIFA United girls. And apparently we've got a game next month against UEFA. And I'm like, really? Can I get more than 3 girls turning up for training then?
Is that an away leg? Do away goals still count double in those games? Or?
I don't think so. They squashed it. UEFA squashed the away goal.
Oh, it's good to see you back doing what you really love, coaching
players.
Yeah.
No, it's actually a lot of fun. There's obviously you come to FIFA and you think there's a lot of people who play football, but then you realize no, there's some people who have played and they've had a really good playing career and now in the administration, and they come and join, but there's also a lot of them who are just first timers.
Yeah. And
it's just a really good mix. So I'm still trying to coach first timers and superstars. So nothing's changed.
That's it. You were not going to get too carried away with yourself then. That's good.
No.
All right. Final question for you today. If you had one piece of wisdom that you could share with coaches, what would that be?
Ooh. Don't be afraid to take a risk, whether that's, I think, from a coaching perspective, if you think you've got something that will unlock, but it's a risk, don't be afraid to take it. I think go out there and challenge yourself to see what you can be, who you are as a person, but also as a coach. I think that's what coaching can also provide you, is you actually find out who you are as a person, because you can be involved in moments that bring out either the best or the worst of you. So I think it's just take the opportunity and just take a risk. The worst thing that can happen is that you start where you end up where you started, and sometimes that's not a bad place to be. For everything that I do, I keep going back and I say, well, if it doesn't work out here, I can always go back home to Byron, pick up my surfboard and go for a surf. I'm happy about that. Because if that's the worst that can happen to me, that's the worst that can happen.
I love it. What a wonderful place to finish. Belinda Wilson, Senior Technical Development Manager, Women's Football at FIFA. Thank you very much. Appreciate you getting up early in the morning to talk to us, and just love your wisdom. You've got a wealth of football knowledge in that head of yours, and you're doing wonderful things for football and women's football in particular across in autumnal Zurich. So keep up the great work, Belinda.
Thanks very much, Gary. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to The Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media, the podcast professionals. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, go to Football Coaches footballcoachesoz.org.au. Buy a membership, renew membership, just find out more about us as an organisation. I'll try and get some common sense, more than I can offer you. You have a great day.